This is Jaychen Lee, and today's Python class topic is built-in functions. As a recap, we must review the definition of functions. Functions are codes that accomplish specific tasks. When we say we define functions, we're meaning we create functions or a pack of codes that perform certain tasks. We have learned how to define functions in previous lectures, but would you believe that some functions are built in, or in other words, already defined for you? We explicitly call them built-in functions. Built-in functions are functions that are already defined with a set of statements. You don't have to use the def keyword to define them. In fact, you already know many of the built-in functions. For example, print function prints the argument to the console. When I say argument, I'm meaning what you pass into the parentheses that come after the functions. And there are several type converters, such as int, str, float, and list. Range function returns a sequence of numbers. You might remember this from the for loop lecture. And the input function returns an argument inputted to the console. In Python, there are 68 built-in functions like these. There might be hundreds or thousands if you count external Python libraries that you can import. You might remember a module called math, which imports many built-in math functions. Let me introduce some popular built-in functions. Absolute function returns an absolute value of numerical argument x, simply meaning a negative sign in front would be removed. By the way, in this video, I will denote the argument with the symbol x for convenience. If you pass -3, you will obtain 3. If you pass 5.5, you will obtain 5.5, with nothing changed because it does not have a negative sign in front. Bool function returns true or false based on argument x. For integers, all numbers except 0 will return true. And for strings, all strings except none will return true. Lastly, for lists, all lists except empty lists will return true. If you look closely, you may realize that arguments that lead to false are all default values. Zeros, none, and empty lists are the most fundamental forms of those integers, strings, and lists, respectively. Dir function prints a list of functions, classes, and objects for argument x. Suppose you pass a list of strings a and b. This will lead Python to return a list of functions that you can use for the list argument, such as add, class, or contains. This function is not frequently used because you can always refer to the Python documentations on Google, which provides more detailed information with better interface. Plus, especially when the argument is numerical, the return values are functions used by Python to process information, not designed for us to use them in our codes. Execute function removes the string feature from the argument and treats the argument like a code. For example, suppose variable is assigned string print ham print sandwich. This is apparently a string without a power to treat itself like a code, but once you use the execute function, it removes the quotation marks and runs the expression. As you can see, it successfully prints ham and sandwich. Note that it works with multi-line string and also does not have any return value. Evaluate function, just like execute function, removes the string feature from the argument and returns expression x. It only works with simple, single-line expressions. Len function returns the length of the object or string argument x. For example, if you pass hey1234, the return value is 8, counting the space in between. If you pass a list of strings a, b, c, the return value is 3, counting the number of elements. If you pass a dictionary, it counts the number of its keys. Max and min return the maximum and minimum value of argument x. If you pass a list, you will get the maximum and minimum element of the list, which are 30 and 4 respectively in this case. If you pass a string separated by commas or spaces, Python treats each character as a number called Unicode and rank them in a specific order. When comparing letters, they are ranked alphabetically, and lowercase comes later. For the range function, you should already know its use in loops. But if used along with list converter, it returns a list of consecutive values. Sum function returns the sum of all items in a list x. For example, the sum of a list 1, 2, 3, 4 returns 10, and the sum of a list range 0, 5 returns the same thing because it was used along with list converter. The last built-in feature we would discuss today is very important. It is about opening and reading files. So far, you mostly learned about how to code within your text editor. However, you can open any kind of file in your computer by using Python. Suppose you have created a text file in your user directory. The location should look like this. It may look different depending on your operating system, but the idea is the same. Every file location has a specific address. To open the text file, use a built-in function called open and assign it to a variable. The argument should be the file location. However, this file is neither editable nor readable yet. You should use read function for reading the file and write function for editing the file. Before using the write function, you must pass W to tell Python that you want to write to the object. Then use write method with a string argument to overwrite the content. I hope you recognize the difference between method and function, which is already covered in the previous lecture. To read the file, use read method. If you print a text file variable with a read method, the return value will be the entire content of the text file. Once you're done with reading or writing, use close method to declare the end. Here's the full code. Pause the video and try implementing the code with your own text file. For username, make sure you put the username of your own desktop instead of directly writing down what is stated on the screen. You might have some questions about the built-in functions or how to find the file location. You can find me at channylee77@gmail.com. Thank you for watching.